Men, do you ever feel like you just can't get ahead? Like you're misunderstood? Like you have no one to talk to that truly hears you?
And women, are you often frustrated, hurt, and saddened in your relationships with the men in your life?
What if there were a community of like-minded men going through the same challenges that would support, hear, and understand what you're going through?
Working together in unison to create understanding, intimacy, and strong connections. That's the Way of the Illuminated Warrior.
Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show is a forum of candid conversations for men and women about men. Being a man today is not always easy. Until now.
All right, welcome friends to another episode of the Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show. I'm your host, Waska, and it is my pleasure to introduce you to today's guest, Jennifer Hough. Jennifer is #1 international best-selling author of UNSTUCK, The Physics of Getting Out of Your Own Way. She's the CEO of The Wide Awakening and an expert in Scientuality, bridging the gap between science and spirituality, helping visionary leaders find meaning and fulfillment in their lives. Her gift of holographic vision allows her to see what's in your way so you can fully love your life. Love that. Her experiential programs, advanced guidance, and global community, Agents of Awakening, are designed to fast-track your dreams and help you embody the thriving operating system so you can live in flow. She has spoken on stages, radio, and television worldwide. So it is my pleasure to introduce my guest today, Jennifer Hough. How you doing, Jennifer?
I'm happy to be here, Waska. Just happy to be here. Happy to be on the planet. Happy to be here with you. Happy to have my dog not barking right now. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, beautiful. So I'm like really happy to connect with you again because we've been connected for a little bit while, doing our own things and all. And then I just, started looking at your offerings, and you've really got some really great programs that you offer the people. So I wanted to introduce you to my audience because we are weaving a lot of the same kind of threads of helping people and being in service. So I think it's important to get you out there as much as possible.
Oh, thank you. It's interesting. A lot of people are out there making a living and living in the world of personal development. But for me, it's, I cannot not do it. I literally, and it's such a crazy time right now with all the polarity.
Understatement. Yeah.
To assist people not to be taken out by the shiny objects and by those, the conversations that can gaslight you off your mission. That doesn't serve right now. It serves us for us all to be able to stay clear on our path and to help people to be literally to do that work, to help people be a living magnet for what they came to this planet for. I can't imagine doing anything more fulfilling right now in this time of serious craziness.
Yeah. Hey, aho and amen to that. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So if it's okay with you, I want to start back in the past and kind of bring us up to the present.
Sure.
So it's my understanding that I think you were in your 20s when you were working a corporate job, a traditional job, if you will, and you just decided to quit that job and step into the unknown, as it were, which ultimately led you to where you are today. What I consider to be a place of trust and open-hearted connection and service. Would you say that's accurate?
I feel as though life is living me. Yeah. And yeah, I would say that's where I am now. That was not the case back then. No, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think all of us that were in this, this self-help, helping others, spiritual light workers, whatever you want to call it, have gone through some kind of cathartic experiences. I know for me, my audience has heard me many, many times. I grew up in an alcoholic family. I remember I was speaking with Adam, your partner, and all. He was did an interview with me, and we shared those experiences, being bullied, what it's like to be a man in today's world and even decades ago. And same for you. I imagine there's got to be some kind of like cathartic experience, something that really transformed you to move out of that traditional world.
Yeah,
I'm wanting to help people. So what would you like to share about that?
Sure. Gosh, I didn't even want to be around people for most of my life up until I was, well, actually, I should even say I was going to say 20, but it was even later than that. I had had eye operations. I had had acne. I just basically wanted to hide in one of the school lockers for most of my upbringing. Plus, I'm 5'10", so I stood out like a sore thumb. And then I've got acne, and then I've got curly hair that my mother used to cut, which was horrible. And exactly, you know what I'm talking
I
about.
had the big fro, believe me. I know. People
Oh yeah,
up in my
and
hair. I get it.
yeah, I would have done anything not to have a big fro back then, let me tell you.
Right.
So, so it's a very isolated, felt like I didn't belong, all that kind of stuff. I ended up making really pursuing academic, I tried to get straight A's. I did get straight A's in high school. But it wasn't for, I don't feel like it was because I was so unbelievably smart. I think it was because I had nothing else. Like that was the way I could feel good about myself, And it was a pretty isolated existence, I would say. And then I went to university for economics, graduated, got a job. I got one of the primo jobs in Procter and Gamble, and I was an economist. And some point during a very good interview, review of my performance, I remember Jocelyn very well saying, "So what do you think about that?" And I said, "I think I've got to go." And she thought I meant go to the bathroom or something. And I
You
said, "I don't think
know.
I can work here. Yeah, I got to go." And I had no idea where it came from. This is my first, everything for me was very intellectual and left brain. And, I remember at 4 years old being able to talk to my dog and know exactly what it was communicating. But, that was weird. So I shut that off pretty quick. And then when I was at Procter and Gamble, I was all in my head. I was living my life according to what I thought my father wanted, that I should be an economist, I should get a corporate job, I should do all these things. And at some point I just went, you know what? This is not fulfilling me. Like, not fulfilling me at all. So I think one of the reasons why those of us building bridges for humanity have had these kind of experiences is because we had to be in our left brain. We had to be in the so-called three-dimensional, muggle world. We had to actually get experience with all of that, because that's the beginning of the bridge. And then we all went on journeys to the other side of the bridge. So for me, I went on a journey. I had a serious health issue, in that I was getting migraines about 3 or 4 times a month. It was awful. And I just had this wakened dream moment in the middle of a migraine where this is going to get weird, but what the heck? I literally saw the world as a hologram, me as a hologram, all of us playing together as a hologram. And I saw from a much greater view why we were here, but more importantly, how our biology is affected, and by our biological terrain, our biology, our health, our genetics, and our lives and our magnetics and the physics of who we are, how it's all affected by our paradigm that we live in, by the paradigm that we're living through, by the ways that we look at life. I would say that's transcendent of belief systems. In fact, I would say that it supersedes belief systems, because when you have a whole operating system, the beliefs come from the operating system. So I realized that my work was going to be help people, assist people to see that metaphysical operating system of how consciousness, life, the environment that we're swimming in actually works, so that we could be in mastery and have everything come to us, rather than having to struggle through life, having to be manipulated or bent to our will. And it doesn't have to be bent.
Yeah.
Once we understand the operating system. So for me, the migraines disappeared the instant that I saw that the pressure that I was living under was both societal and was my father's ancestry. And I saw it in a wakened dream that was so vivid I couldn't believe it.
Hmm.
And as soon as I saw it, I went, oh, this isn't mine. And I just literally
Powerful. Yeah.
handed it back to his ancestry, right?
Wow.
And that was the last time I had a migraine.
Wow.
So and that's the first, and I honestly, I'm so skeptical of anything that sounds, I was skeptical of anything that sounded woo,
Yeah.
you know?
But when it
So
works like that and you could
yeah,
actually have a tangible,
exactly.
viable experience that, okay, now I don't have these migraines, and you literally transcended, generational trauma,
Mhm.
really, which is a beautiful thing, which
Yeah,
we all
yeah.
have. We all have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I was looking at that, I don't know why we come in a certain way, right? We come in with some natural propensities. Well, one of my natural propensities is that some people are musical, some people can dance, some people are mathematical. My natural propensity is efficiency. I love productivity. I don't know why, but I can tell you that one of the benefits it's given me is I'm consistently looking for the most efficient way to transcend living in that sort of confined, very tight, three-dimensional should, must, and have to world,
Yeah.
where we can rise above the cloud and be in that infinite possibility state in pure clarity, able to dance without having to always be in my head. And I'm like, what's the most efficient way to get there? What I realized
You got a
was,
pill for me? You got that pill?
well, it's
I'll take that red
interesting.
pill. I'll take the red pill right
You
now.
know, it's
Come
really,
on.
what's funny, Waska, is I was like, there's so many people I've seen and programs I've been to, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're awesome, but they just weren't asking the same questions as I was.
Hmm.
And I went to all these programs and it was about excavating my belief systems. Well, I've got this core belief, or I've got this, blah, 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 blah. And I had all this great work out there. And it all got me to a place where I questioned all of it. I did it all and then I questioned it and I went, wait a second, I'm literally doing ones and twosies of belief systems,
Hmm.
A, but B, belief systems are all part of a paradigm.
Yeah.
So the first step was I thought, okay, I'm gonna look at how do you actually shift paradigms so you can actually transmute hundreds of beliefs at a time.
Yeah.
So if we did the work and the freedom that I felt at the end of that work and being able to put together a methodology for it was incredible. But that wasn't the end of it. My little crazy little question asking efficiency brain went to this place of, well, wait a second. Why are we even excavating? Why are we putting all our attention on excavating what isn't working when we could be activating and integrating and embodying the operating system that does work? Like, what happens to all of those lower frequency belief systems when you actually, literally, when you actually come from the frequency of the truth of who we are, from that greater self, from the frequency of who we are as a divine child of an infinite universe. And when we come from that place, it's a higher frequency. And all of a sudden, all of those belief systems that I thought that I had to excavate before I had a great life, they became
Right.
less relevant and had less of a hold on me. Then it was like easy peasy to transmute them. So kind of took myself on a path, and I kind of thank goodness that I didn't have a family that was into
Hmm.
personal development, because they weren't. Because I just asked I just asked questions that probably anyone that had done a lot of work would never ask.
Yeah.
Just from being I just acted like the dummy in the room, which I was. So,
Well, I think there's no playbook for it, especially like,
right.
quote unquote spirituality. We
Yeah.
come to our own, so to speak.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we're not encouraged to do that, just like with the big hair. I don't know if you had this experience. So I had this huge fro in high school, and I took a lot of like abused for it, like people throwing papers in and all. I remember this kid, Tim Bradley, he busted my chops the whole semester of school there and whatever. The fro. Meanwhile, he comes back after summer break and he's got this huge fro on my so that like this, but there's something that goes along with all that. Just the ways that people are with other people, and how do you develop through that, and how do you speak truth to somebody? But we're not really taught that, right? I mean,
no, it's true.
We'll be right back after this.
Do you sometimes feel down, lost, or lonely? Are your finances feeling sluggish? Can your relationships use a healthy tune-up? Don't fear, bro. Help is here. Experience the benefits of connecting with other men who are going through similar challenges. Be supported in our safe, sacred, and inspiring monthly telecircle with the Brotherhood of the Illuminated Warriors. Connect with Waska for one-on-one mentoring with the first session completely free. What have you got to lose? Check out illuminatedwarrior.com or send an email to waska@illuminatedwarrior.com. You're invited to step up your game and join us. You'll be glad you did.
And I have a feeling you're this way, actually, Waska, that what happens to us is we get into, I was like definitely didn't fit in my family. Certainly didn't fit in high school. And I don't know how many conversations that we have thousands of clients from all over the world. I don't know how many conversations I've had that I think it's so spectacular to know this, that the not fitting in that most people spend thousands of dollars trying to fix. Like, I don't fit in. I don't feel like I connect with people, or at least not with the average person. I feel like I see things differently. I feel so different, blah, 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 blah. That in actuality, the people that pioneer a new world must not fit in, because if they were really great at fitting in, their life would literally be giving energy to and recreating the way things are.
Right.
By playing in that realm. So for those of us that are a bit unicorny, I don't know if that's in the dictionary yet exactly, but it should be if it isn't.
The corny, I like that.
Right. For those of us that just know that things can be different, that literally feel called by something greater, that aren't really interested in exploring or arguing about the status quo. We are the ones the reason we don't see a lot of people around us feeling the same way is because when you're a pioneer, you're actually leading the crowd rather than in it, and not like Enlightenment Olympics. That's better. And it's not a competition. It's just, that's what that kind of life facilitates. It facilitates questioning everything. It facilitates not accepting the status quo. It facilitates thinking for yourself and not needing other people to approve of your life. Well, eventually when you grow up, you don't want people to approve you, but yeah.
But we don't know that when we're young, and it's challenging, and most of us don't want to step out of that comfort zone. So when we stay in that, stay in line, then the magic doesn't happen, because what you're describing, I think, really is the gold of how we can really change and grow and create these new paradigms that people really want, obviously.
Oh, they do. Well, here's the thing. Imagine that the rest of society is the asking, is the energetic asking. So I was just talking to a girlfriend yesterday. And as I was talking to her, she said, Jennifer, I don't know why, but I went back to work corporate. I have a couple of part-time jobs, and I'm doing these jobs. And I swear I'm watching people be in groupthink about that they're governed by this corporate entity and the managers and the shoulds, musts, and have tos, and they don't feel like they can voice anything because they want to keep their medical coverage. They want to keep they want to keep all these things. So they just kind of are good soldiers, they just keep soldiering on. And I thought to myself, wow, like she's right in the thick of it. But imagine the powerful metaphysical asking of someone, and I've worked with thousands of people like this, but I remember one, even her, like, how do I transcend the rat race? And a doctor I was working with that felt like she was in the rat race, same thing. And she's like, Jennifer, I just don't know how. And I thought to myself, but it's available. Everyone can do it. Anyone.
Yeah.
You just got to know that the door is there. And then metaphysically, the people will present that will start to move you out of that. But most people don't even realize that there's a door.
Yeah.
So,
not showing the door. A lot of people don't
right?
see the door, don't
Yeah.
go the door, don't go through the door. But that's, the people who have gone through the door know, ooh, the door is the place to be. Yeah.
Takes a little courage, though. It takes a little courage, because the rest of, the rat race, the hamsters on the wheel, you're breaking out. Isn't it? Do you find it weird? Don't you find it weird?
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do feel to some degree it's by design, because you have people who are in control, who like the status quo, who don't want us to go through the door and make ripples and waves and elevate and awaken and show people, hey, there is another way. It's a healthier way. It's a more holistic way.
Yeah.
You could actually make your own way, either that, or you could stay under our thumb and we don't want to show you the door.
So what's interesting about that discussion is a lot of people start complaining about, oh, come on, like, why is the world like that? How come there is a conspiracy, or that the hamster wheel's a thing, and that we have to get rid of the hamster wheel? But we actually don't. By complaining about the hamster wheel, you actually give it more energy, and you give your power to it. In reality, what's available for us and to us is this ability to actually think of it like, I always think of the movie Avatar, and you're riding one of those dragons, and you have your ponytail plugged into the dragon, right?
Yeah.
And you're connected, you're soul to soul, and it feels like it's you and the dragon, and that's all there is. And you need to be fully present because you're flying a dragon. So imagine that you take your ponytail and you plug it into a paradigm called the rat race. You kind of have to realize that you're on the rat race dragon.
Yeah.
And someone has to point it out to you for you to go, hey, wait a second, there are other dragons. I don't just have to be on the rat race dragon. I don't have to be in this group think. And as we focus on the idea that there is another possibility, it becomes more available to us. I mean, the laws of physics dictate that as you open the door to there is another way, all of a sudden the other way we make ourselves available to it. It didn't just show up. We didn't create it. We didn't manifest it. It already was. But because we were willing to be brave enough to consider that we're not a victim of the environment around us, including conspiracy theories, we get to create whatever we want.
Reality,
yeah, I'm sure
I like what you call like scientuality, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Science and spirituality, which I love. So speak a little bit more about that. What your connection and your work is with that. Like, how does that aid in servicing people?
So because my history is in economics, it's all numbers, right? And then what happened is I got really, really sick with those migraines. And so I developed, I studied nutrition because the doctors weren't helping me, God bless. And I started to do cleanses, and I ended up with the largest holistic nutrition practice in Canada, but not because I was particularly intuitive at the time. Well, I mean, we're all intuitive. It's whether we've accessed it or not. But what happened to me is all of a sudden I realized that biology and physics and chemistry are all connected through my little scientific diabolical brain. And so I had a client in, it just so happened she had migraines, and her husband had brought her in. She sat down in front of me. And I had a little timeline chart that at the time nobody else was doing before. I was doing the physical issues that she'd ever suffered, and then the emotional issues that she's ever suffered. And I did it on parallel timelines to look at all the correlations. And when I noticed that at 4 or 5 years old, her mother was a heroin addict and gave her up for adoption. And she got adopted by this incredible family. They're just like empowering, inspiring, loving, incredible. We would all wish to have a family like this. And she spent the rest of her life resenting her mother for giving her up instead.
Wow.
And she developed a brain tumor.
Wow. Yeah.
And with her, it was because I had such a close connection to migraines. I looked at her, I could literally see that it was being energized by this schism in her thinking.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know the science of that. Why does your biochemistry get so deeply affected by your beliefs? In fact, why do your genes get expressed according to the paradigm that you're living in? I mean, we don't have to live out our parents' genetics. We inherit the possibility of those genes playing out, but what actually drives the car is our actual choice of beliefs and the way we think. So, in other words, how we think, how we perceive life necessarily dictates a certain biochemistry in the body. Those biochemicals become the triggers or not for certain genes.
Yeah.
And so that was my first foray in. I knew that she was going to die because nothing I was going to say in this case would change her mind. Subsequently, I had, I don't know, I think 6 sequential people with migraines in my clinical practice. And what was so incredibly cool is that every single one of them was able to reverse their migraines because they were willing. But this woman showed me something, how deeply, not in a woo way, but in a very, even studied with Dr. Hamer, who's very interesting. He showed exactly what I saw in my mind's eye. He showed it on CAT scans. He could find schisms in the brain. He could tell you exactly what they related to and exactly what disease the person was going to get.
Yeah.
It was such great validation. So that was my foray in, and that's before I studied physics because I wanted to understand, remember my efficient brain, right? Like totally efficient. Okay, there's biology. Thank you, Bruce Lipton, and beliefs. But there's a whole other world called the laws of physics that govern everything. Make up your biology, make up your beliefs, make up your thoughts, make up your body, make up your life. And I knew instantly that if I could embody the laws of physics, that it would transcend even needing to look at beliefs and biology because the laws of physics actually govern both of those. So that's kind of the history of how I got there.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty amazing. And it makes sense to me because just like you can, I believe, and I know you do also, you can heal yourself. You can transcend these diseases into balance and health. The same, just like what happened to that woman. You can make yourself ill and you could literally die because you're not willing to change your biochemical physiology and all. So it's another thing that we're just really not taught unless you're studying these deep sciences or spiritual ways to actually experience that. So but it is pretty amazing. It's kind of the same thing as like a lot of other people, they talk about the law of attraction or whatever you think is what's going to become, which is all true. Energy flows and follows what our mind puts out there, right?
Yeah, it does. And so let's just take law of attraction way deeper than the sort of common way we talk about it. Right. Yeah, the common way we talk about it. So I teach a course called Get Out of Your Own Way, and there's this gorgeous woman, let's call her Kathy, in the program. And we had done day 1. Back then it was 5 days. Now we don't have to do it for 5 days. I mean, we're all learning a lot and sort of catching up to ourselves. So we had talked about the laws of physics and how they work, and she was so excited. She came back in on day 2 and she brought in a vision board, and she goes, Jennifer, oh my God, my son was helping me clean up my office, and we found this vision board, and look, there's a picture of a red Ford F-150, and this is from 5 years ago. And I said, and she goes, and look outside. And there was the exact truck, right? That's what she drove there. And I said to her, may I challenge? So she goes, that was intention. That was law of attraction. And I said to her, well, actually, it's much deeper than you think. And she said, yeah, but. And I said, Kathy, listen, you are first and foremost a body that houses a spirit. And the spirit's been through many iterations on life on this planet and others. And you've developed natural propensities, skill sets, personality traits. And consciousness at that level, consciousness and you are in a dance. Mm. And then that soul, that spirit poured through a physical body. And it's still in a dance with all of consciousness. I said to her, imagine that in every lifetime, you got more and more and more clarity, and you got more and more and more intentional, and you got more and more and more interested in different things because of your propensities and the things that you learned over time. She said, uh-huh. And I said to her, imagine now that, oh, that's so funny. Imagine now that you are someone who not only you are an intention. So literally your life itself is an intention. In other words, your beingness, your choice to be here in co-conspiracy with infinite wisdom is this beautiful manifestation of the evolution of humanity, the evolution of civilization, where the environment is, how Earth is evolving, where your soul is evolving, how God is evolving. And it came together in a confluence of perfection, that in that 0 point, you were born. And that 0 point is not a static is. It's actually a trajectory. So the meeting of your soul and your body is a trajectory that you were born to go on, that isn't necessarily about doing a job, but it's about your way of being with your specific skill sets that you have the privilege of pouring into whatever you quote unquote do. So imagine, since you are a particle of God, that you are, by the way, it was a long-winded explanation, but it's so important. Yeah. It's so important for people to understand, because they miss, you are the attraction. You literally are the living magnet. So here's this confluence of everything going on a journey that in an instant, when another star system, another galaxy, another species could have been invented. In that moment, what was birthed in this time-space reality was you. That's how infinite wisdom thought you were a good idea. And it's not that you as a static being were a good idea, but the trajectory that you were born to go on in the non-time space reality was a brilliant idea and would bridge all time space to more harmony and more heaven. That's who you are. Oh. Now, do you think literally that this little 3-dimensional muggle you with an intention to get a red truck was the one that got the red truck? Don't you think that all of consciousness, which forms 99.9%, 13.9% of you, all of consciousness co-conspiring for this glorious journey that you're on, actually gave you the magazine, gave you the idea? And so imagine that Kathy was thinking that her intention, as in her mind's intention, which is so much less powerful than her beingness, actually being on a trajectory to build bridges for all of humanity. And that because there's a co-conspiracy of her greater consciousness for her unfolding incredible journey, which was actually incredible. She looked at me and I looked at her and I said, listen, do you really think that all of consciousness is kind of waiting with the sort of finger tappy thing going, I can't wait till she intends something? When in truth, the mind's intentions are always superseded, trumped, and overridden by the beingness, by the trajectory that your beingness combined with your body went on. And because of that, you were given the magazine, you were given the timing, you were given that particular vision board. In fact, what I would say about your vision board is it would have been even more juicy if you had had the truck and all that stuff at the top. You weren't thinking about like, I want that and that'll make me happier and that'll make me happier and fill the whole board up with it. But if you just put the truck and a bunch of stuff that like was obvious to you, and then you drew a line about a third of the way down the page, and on the rest of the page, you just wrote the words or better.
We'll be right back after this. Hey guys, this is Waska. Listen, if you're hearing my voice, there are no coincidences. Are you ready to get unblocked and take the next step forward, whether it's with relationship issues, finances, or just moving into the next phase to elevate yourself? Listen, bros, this is what I do. I'm here for you. Drop me an email at Waska, that's WASKA, at illuminatedwarrior.com. We will work on this together and take you to the next step. I promise you'll be glad you did.
See, consciousness, the mind of consciousness, if there was such a thing, has access to all of the resources that ever were, ever will be. And so when we say or better, we're actually accessing something so far beyond the confines of what this tiny little pea brain can come up with, right? Because this is all based on history.
Oh, sure. History and environmental influences, our parents, our, social, interactions, all that. Nature, all of it,
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
But yeah, busting out of those paradigms is like what you're talking about is it's a beautiful thing, it's the great unknown, which what I think, reading some of your stuff on your website and watching some of your videos, I'm like, yeah, she stepped into the great unknown, which is that liminal space, that not quite there, not quite here, but where the magic and the miracles and the beautiful things can happen.
100%.
Is really where I believe that we want to be, So yeah.
But it's not that you don't get taught that in school, right? Like, how do you actually navigate living that way?
I believe, and maybe you share this belief also, like it was always like a niggling in me, that same thing. Like when I was young, like we were talking about the animals before, I still talk to animals. People think I'm weird, but they have a very high sentient intelligence. And when you get in tune with their level, so to speak, and speak their language, it's just like, they call kids autistic now, they're very, very highly intelligent. They're frustrated. They're acting out. No, we're not able to communicate with them on their level. That's why they're frustrated and acting out. And they don't necessarily need meds or, the ways that we're dealing with them rather than communicating on their level. It's the same with animals. It's just a different language, I believe, anyway. And when we could open ourselves up to be more in tune to whether it's, a dog, a cat, a bird, a child that's labeled as autistic, and we could get into their, space and meet them where they are, just like, I don't know. I'm going to go off track here. I don't know if, I know you've traveled for Canada and all. Any place I've ever traveled before, people, Americans, and I'll speak for myself, we just expect everybody to speak English, and we expect people to, the American way. Whereas, other countries, they come here and they speak English, and I don't know where I'm going with this, other than that there's like a certain mentality of, well, this is the way it is. Well, maybe doesn't have to be the way it is. And there's a very different way right under the surface that we can tap into and have greater communications, have greater connections with people and with animals and with children who are not, able so readily to communicate with us. And I think that's why this work is so important to tap into that and to open ourselves up and to experience another way and to challenge ourselves and step into that unknown.
Well, we're back to the beginning of our conversation, which is around belonging is really overrated. The idea of trying to belong is highly overrated because, having been around the world a couple of times, what's available to us is so miraculous and so beautiful and so astounding. All the different ways of doing things and the different ways of communing and the different ways of connecting. And this is not a crunchy granola conversation. This is not some, tree hugging conversation, even though I love to hug trees, but it's not that. It really is a question of trying to survive the idea of barely belonging to society.
Do you want to belong to society? That's a question I asked. Do I really want to belong to society?
My point, right? Or being curious on the adventure of an incredible life on an incredible planet, whereby there are stacks and stacks of varieties of ways to be and ways to think and languages and on and on and on and on. And so, I remember the movie Tomorrowland. Speaking of another movie I love. So Tomorrowland is, if you haven't watched it, you should watch it for your listeners, because Tomorrowland is so cool. You don't know where it's going at first, but something happens somewhere around midpoint to maybe 60% through the movie where you're like, what now? And I had a dream that looked exactly like a point in Tomorrowland where you kind of wake up into a place that's above the clouds. You wake up in a field and it's a bunch of other people that don't think like the sheep. It's a bunch of other people that know that there's another way. And there's no judgment on sheep. God, I would have done anything to be a sheep in high school. Seriously, I would have done anything to fit in. It was so painful. So here we are in that dream where I just, for me, it was above the clouds. In there, it's like you wake up in a field that's unfamiliar. But imagine that we figure out how to create moving forward, how to interact with each other, rather than making the modus operandi for humanity trying to fit in with each other, or trying not to piss people off, or trying to make other people happy, like carrying people, all this stuff. All this stuff, all these shoulds, musts, and have tos that have been given to us by certain, institutions, seem to help us have a mutual understanding and keep us away from chaos. That's what we think. However, yes to the road signs. Yes to the road signs, yes to that the bank can't, do certain things. Yes, that, there's certain rules that are very great. But what we don't get to learn is, how do we thrive? How do we be both in heaven and on earth? How do we, cross the two circles and turn them into a Vesica Pisces, where we get to live in the middle? And we get to be in that dance. And Buckminster Fuller, who was a genius, very much adhered to that understanding of the world. He said, you can spend your life trying to argue about the past and try to fix it, or you can actually spend your life creating what it is that you want. And that works on a macro scale. And it also works on an individual scale of what you want for your life. And so the two factors that are necessary to live the way that you're describing are, first of all, you have to realize that you're on an adventure. This literally is a place of wonder where you're not meant to know the next corner.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to wrestle life to the ground, because that's trying to control what is. This isn't a wrestling match. It's a dance.
Yeah.
And the second aspect is that you're curious instead of frightened or controlling or trying to feel safe or trying not to have your past happen to you. Now, there's a whole bunch of methodologies on how to transcend that. But the first thing is, if you could master being curious on the adventure, a lot of the stuff that happened to you in the past would be much more easily transmuted from that higher position, rather than being in pain and constantly being in excavation. Therefore, you're constantly, in the land of physics, putting attention on what is not desired.
Which is a large part of the population. Yeah.
It is most of the population.
So,
Yeah.
so what would you want to offer the listeners? Something, something fairly easy, something
Yeah.
that they can access to alter whatever is not working, an imbalance, just, being stuck, just something that they could do that's practical, that they could just do right now, even,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So there's something we did called the 10 days of activations. And basically it takes your right brain, which is more connected to the possibility realm, to the realm of the adventure. And your right brain tends to have more creative access to deeper truths that do exactly what I was just talking about, which is bring you to a place where you can look back at reality and have a much higher frequency understanding, like you get a perspective on it. And so what we've done is we've made 10 days of what we call brain bridges, where we assist the right brain to actually have a conversation with the left brain to upgrade its understanding of life on the subjects of your health, on aging, on money, on time, on, all of the things that are important to us. And they're all less than 10 minutes each, and they happen sequentially, but they're meant to shift your beingness. They're meant to actually shift your entire beingness. And do you want me to share where to get those?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's the wideawakening.com. A little pop-up will come, and that will access you. And it'll also access you to a free month of Agents of Awakening, where you could take a whole bunch of our courses for free. So once you get on those 10 days, it'll direct you to a free month in our community. So and I recommend that people take Get Out of Your Own Way if they're in that community. So it's really cool. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, you've got a lot of wonderful programs that I highly recommend that people check out. You've been doing this a long time. You've been in service to many, many, many. And if people who are watching are resonating with you, definitely I will put your contact information in the show notes and all, and go check out the free offering that Jen's offering. And I just want to ask you, before we close, so the Great Awakening, where was that, even that phrase that, that beingness that you're about, where was that born from?
So, we're always awakening, aren't we? There's always contrast that births something new, right? But I mean, yes. in terms of, we have infinite lifetimes, eventually you're going to have to wake up, I suppose that I could just, because I see holographically, I could just feel that something was happening with humanity, whereby we were reaching this weird tipping point where enough of us weren't willing anymore to live in survival or try to fit in the rat race. And that enough of us were just exhausted. It almost didn't make sense anymore. We were just going, what am I doing? And for me, it was more of an everybody thing. It wasn't just a wide awakening of people who happen to have a spiritually minded, life.
Yeah.
It's because you don't have to be spiritual. Again, I was talking to a woman just this morning who lived in Texas, and she was a unicorn in her family, and she just knew that she didn't adhere to her family's values. She just didn't understand the shoulds, musts, and have tos that they had, and they were very frustrated with her. And she exemplifies it perfectly. She started to work for herself, and she started to help people with finances because for some reason she just has a brain for that stuff. And we had a great conversation, and she's a perfect example because it wasn't a spiritual choice. It was, but it wasn't, right? For her at the time, it wasn't a spiritual choice.
Yeah.
It was a choice to know that there was a way to live her life a different way that wasn't in society dictating it.
Yeah.
That she was being facilitated by life in her mind. I mean, spiritually, I would use different words, but she knew that she was being facilitated by something greater than her that was calling her. And I started seeing, as a nutritionist back then, I started seeing so many people feeling the same way. I don't want to keep going this way. So the Wide Awakening is all about kind of poking your head above the clouds and going, hey, you can create whatever you want in this place, and then really getting the tools and understanding the superpowers to be able to do it. So that's why it's called that.
All right, beautiful. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate all the work that you're doing out there.
Thank you.
Yeah. And again, for the listeners and the viewers, just check out Jen's work. She offers some really, really great programs, and as you can see and hear, she's in service to the people. So that's
Amen.
That's what it's all about. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me today, Jen.
Oh, thank you, Waska, thank you for all that you do in the world. Thank you for everyone that you bring to people and all the work that you bring to people and what you've embodied yourself that you exude and other people pick. You're like a walking permission to be yourself. So,
oh, that's beautiful. Wow. I like that. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, thanks for having
great.
me.
Yeah. So I hope everybody enjoyed the show, and just continue to illuminate your paths with love and kindness.
Visit IlluminatedWarrior.com if you'd like to go deeper and find out more about what's available within the Illuminated Warrior Men's Transformational Community. Tune in next time for more candid conversations for men and women about men on the Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show. Until next time, illuminate your path with loving kindness.